Howdy, everybody, and I hope all is well. I want to talk today about Facebook pixels and custom events. This is a lecture that I've gotten a lot of requests on from you guys, and I wanted to sort of break down installing a Facebook pixel, setting up conversions, etc. Like, Facebook makes it very, very complicated for some reason to do this. They have like 7 different tools. It's hard to find what you're looking for. Custom conversion events and events are 2 different things in Facebook's eyes. The pixel is different than conversions. What is the pixel? So I want to talk to you about all that stuff, help you understand it in a very simple way. It's very good for you to understand these things yourself, but if you're managing Facebook campaigns for clients, this stuff is going to come up all the time, and you're going to really benefit from being able to explain to your clients in a very clear and understandable way what all this stuff is. So let's jump into it. First, if you haven't bought my billing template, the template that helps you design complex return on ad spend bonuses, or rather complex bonuses targeting lead volume for your clients. So let's say you're charging your clients a certain percentage of your total ad spend, or you're charging them in a bracketed structure. I've talked about this a lot. Many of you have heard me talk about this. It's very valuable to offer your clients a bonus incentive where you discount the base fee in exchange for being able to earn a bonus based on performance. So if you'd like to check out that template, go to bit.ly/lead bonus, bit.ly/lead bonus. The link is down at the bottom of this slide over here. And check that out, because it's a really, really good bonus system. You have a 7-day money back guarantee, but hundreds of people have already bought it. It's a relatively new product, and so far everyone who's purchased it said it's been really, really great. So that's that. Okay, so Facebook pixels and custom events. So I want to walk you through a couple slides first, just to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to bring you into a live Facebook account and show you how to set all this stuff up. And remember, while Facebook makes this stuff seem very complicated, it's not really complicated. Once you understand the fundamentals, like what a pixel is and what a custom conversion is, and just like the basic things they're used for, I think you'll have a very easy and clear understanding of how it all works together. So first, let's take a look at the Facebook pixel. The Facebook pixel is just a piece of code that you add into the header section of your website, and it is used to collect audiences. It's used to collect people into a pool that you could then use from. So think about it as like, maybe a census. Like we're just tracking a lot of users, and we're adding them into a database, but we're not actually doing anything with them just by installing the pixel. And the pixel is like an actual piece of code. It's a 1x1 pixel, transparent piece of script that goes on your website wherever you tell your website backend to fire the pixel. And I'll explain that in a second. Facebook's going to give you, when you create a business account, Facebook's going to give you a pixel that's going to look like this. That's going to look like what you see on the screen. Don't worry about understanding anything in there. All you need to know is that it's worthwhile to add that pixel to your site. And it's every single time a page loads that has this pixel installed, Facebook will track and add that user to the database. Now, you don't get things like name and any personal identifiable information. It's an alphanumeric string that identifies that user, and it's going to track a page view. That's what the pixel does. It just starts collecting that database. So the first thing you need to know about all this stuff is install this pixel right away. And I'm going to show you how to do this. And you might have 300 pages on your website, but it's okay, because you're going to be able to install the pixel in the header section, in the header code of your website. And it'll automatically fire on every single page that has that header code. And I'm going to talk to you about Google Tag Manager or other tag manager systems. Google Tag Manager happens to be the most popular, but you could install it through any tag manager system, and that's actually the easiest way to install the pixel. So if you have a WordPress site or a Squarespace site or a Weebly or a Wix or any of these CMS systems, or HubSpot site, Shopify site, it's very easy to install the Facebook pixel. You just need to find most of these CMS platforms actually have apps that allow you to just install the pixel, install a certain piece of code in the header section. But again, Tag Manager is going to be the easiest way to do it, and I'll show you how to do that. So install that pixel right away, even before you launch Facebook campaigns, because that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen with advertisers getting started with Facebook. Like, they might be 3 months out from actually launching a paid advertising campaign, but they're not collecting audiences. So when it comes time for them to actually create a campaign in Facebook ads, they're not able to run a remarketing campaign because they haven't installed the pixel on their site. So even if it's a brand new site, even if you don't have any intention of running Facebook ads yet, it's still worth it. It's very important to just install that Facebook pixel on your site right away, because then in a month from now, or in a week from now, or in a few days from now, you want to run a remarketing campaign to cart abandoners, or a remarketing campaign on Facebook to previous website visitors within the last 30 days. You could do that because you already have data from your pixel. And again, just adding the pixel to your site doesn't do anything. It doesn't cost you any money. It doesn't mean you're running an ad campaign. You don't need to be running any campaigns to have a pixel. So just install that pixel on your site. Now, the pixel, like I said, will only collect users. If you want to use the pixel, if you want to get any benefit out of that pixel, then you'll have to be creating custom audiences, conversion events, running campaigns, and there's all different ways you could use that pixel, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. Ideally, you should be tracking value. So whether it's a form submission you're tracking or a newsletter sign up, you should be able to attach a value to that. And Facebook makes it very easy for you to do that. But especially if it's a purchase conversion, if you're going to end up tracking conversions through Facebook ads, then you should definitely be setting up events that track value, that you input the value, and I'll show you again how to do that. Now remember, the pixel is not what tracks conversions per se. You need to add additional code or set up a custom conversion to tell Facebook when an actual valuable conversion event happened. And remember, the way we define conversion is any action a user would take on your site that you want them to take that in some way represents revenue or value. So those typical conversion actions would be a form submission, a phone call potentially, a view of a key page, requesting contact information, a purchase, a subscriber, an ebook download, right? All those types of things are typical conversion events. And you could track all those with Facebook. You need the pixel in order to track it, but it's not the only thing you need. So I guess you could say where the pixel is a necessary prerequisite to tracking conversions, but it is not a sufficient prerequisite to tracking conversions. There are other things you need, and those are going to be custom conversions or Facebook events. And I'm going to cover those in a second. Make sure the pixel is installed on every page. I've seen a lot of people that just throw the pixel on the home page of their site, but that means if somebody goes to any other page but the home page, the pixel won't fire. So let's say somebody comes to an inner page of your site through an organic link or through a Facebook post or whatever it may be, or they come to a blog post. You want the pixel on every single page. There's no reason that I could think of not to have the pixel everywhere, because you might think, well, I only want to run a remarketing campaign to people who viewed a product page. That's fine. You'll be able to set up a custom audience of people in that pixel that just viewed a specific product page or all product pages based on URL rules. That we'll talk about that in a second in custom conversions. But just because a view of a specific random page on your site is not valuable to you per se, you should still have the pixel there, because you want your core database to be as big as possible. You want to be collecting as many users as possible from your total audience, and then you're going to create segments of those audiences to be used in certain campaigns. So sure, like you might want to run a remarketing campaign to anybody who abandoned a cart. So you'll create a URL rule specifically for that campaign that will only target a segment of your population. That's how the pixel works. The pixel is just creating a broad population. If you're using a root domain and a subdomain, something that I've done many times and something many clients do. So for example, you might have your core website is acme.com, and you might have a store or a blog or something on blog.acme.com or shop.acme.com, or you might have training courses or programs on learning.acme.com, whatever. So there might be a case where you would want to have two separate pixels, but that's probably overcomplicating things. In most cases, you would just use the exact same pixel code, and you could install it both on the root domain and on the subdomain. And the easiest way, again, to do that is through Google Tag Manager, and I will show you how to do that in a minute. So there's a few important things that you could do once you start building an audience, a total population, using your Facebook pixel. So the first, or I guess the most popular thing people will do is create custom audiences with the Facebook pixel. And that will allow you to target those audiences in campaigns. So examples of custom audiences, and just think of custom audiences as slices of your population based on certain criteria. So I have 10,000 users in my database that my pixel has picked up on. And now I want to create a campaign just from a slice of those people. or what we would call a segment, a bucket, something, we would come up with some identifiers that will pull out specific individuals, group them together in a bucket, and I'm going to use that bucket for this. And this might be a retargeting campaign. This might be a leads ads campaign, whatever it may be. Some of the popular segments, previous website visitors, or previous website visitors from the past 30 days, 180 days. You could, there's a lot of different ways you can configure an audience. Cart abandoners, people who viewed a specific page or your checkout page, visitors of specific pages. Maybe you want to retarget to your blog readers. You could target purchasers, right? So long as you're tracking purchases as a conversion. Subscribers, again, you would need to have a registration event tracking. Visitors by time spent on site. So I can have a segment of visitors that have spent, in the 75% quartile of all my visitors. So the outliers I might have, again, going back to that example, 10,000 users in my database, and maybe there's 300 of those users that have spent the most time on site compared to my entire audience, and I want to use those people in a campaign. And you could also use inclusion and exclusion lists. Like the permutations are very broad on how you could set up custom audiences, because you could create multiple rules. So you could include people that are buyers and subscribers, and you could exclude people that just visited a blog page, let's say, right? So there's a lot of different ways you could do this. And then you're going to go and use those audiences in actual campaigns. So name your audience and use those audiences. So creating custom audiences. And again, a custom audience is very different than a conversion event, but they're both using the data in the Facebook pixel. A custom audience is something you'll use for targeting ad campaigns. Tracking conversions is what you're going to be using to optimize ad campaigns and to report on ad campaigns. They're two very separate dimensions, but they're both elements that require the pixel in order to work. So the first thing is custom audiences. You must have a pixel first, collecting data in order to create custom audiences in the first place. If you want to track conversions, that's not custom audiences. That's something else. So that's setting up conversion events with the Facebook pixels. And there's a couple different ways you could do this. First, Facebook has what they call events, which is a bunch of pre-built common events that allow you to easily add a little piece of code onto the specific page that event fires on. Now let's just break this down very simply, okay? Let's just take a purchase event, for example. So I know on my website and on most of my clients' websites that when somebody buys something, they get redirected to a thank you page. Now, if anybody who lands on that thank you page is somebody who must have, on the previous page, completed a purchase, we would add the purchase code, the little additional purchase script that Facebook gives you, and I'm going to show you this exactly, how to do this. You add that Facebook conversion script to that specific page. And this is where it differs from the pixel. The pixel is something which is added universally on every single page of a website. The specific event tag that Facebook gives you for a specific conversion is only added to the pages that signify that specific event took place. Same thing is for, let's say, a registration. If I'm running a webinar or you have a event and there's a thank you page for that event or there's a thank you page for that webinar that signifies somebody registered successfully, then you put that specific tag that Facebook gives you for an event on the registration page or on the registration thank you page. Okay, so that's the concept of these pre-built Facebook events. And again, it requires some additional manual code. And then there are custom conversions that are URL based. So like I said, Facebook makes all this stuff very complicated because within conversions, there's two fundamental ways you could do it. One, you could create URL based conversion rules. And oftentimes you could accomplish the exact same thing using two different approaches in Facebook. So for example, I could create a registration conversion through either custom conversions or through events, because Facebook happens to have a pre-built event conversion for registrations. So I could use that, or I could just create a URL base that if anybody gets to this thank you URL, fire this specific conversion. Now, I would say that if you can use the pre-built, if you can use Facebook's pre-built events for conversions, and they have a lot of the core ones, like they have add to cart, initiating a checkout, adding payment info, purchasing, subscribing, starting a trial, you should, because Facebook has a lot of default reporting columns that include their default events, and it's just easier to report on. So that's my own advice, is like it's better to use Facebook's pre-built events and avoid URL-based conversions if possible for that reason. And then there's another reason, because like let's say you change your URL at some point, right? You have a thank you page, and you happen to change the URL of that page. Maybe you want to make it shorter or cleaner or whatever that may be. So if you're using Facebook's default events by adding manual code to that page, then you don't need to make any modifications to the actual conversion event, and it'll still work because it's based on the code in the page and not based on a URL that you're feeding to Facebook. But if you change the URL and you're using custom conversions URL based, you'll have to go back into Facebook and edit the actual custom conversion event that you've configured. And then Facebook makes it pretty easy to test event tracking and configuration and things like that. And I'll show you the tools for that as well. Facebook also has a bunch of these partner integrations, and I'll show you how those work. And it just makes tracking events and pixel installation easier for a lot of the core CMS systems like Shopify, WordPress, HubSpot, etc. In most cases, I recommend still installing the pixel through Google Tag Manager. It's just very easy, flexible, and you could then create a lot of additional rules, and it's just a very, very intuitive and easy to use software. So I would recommend that. And I'm going to show you Google Tag Manager in a moment. And remember, the pixel and custom conversion events are not the same thing. So I want to reiterate that. The pixel is your core piece of script that I showed you in the beginning that you're going to install everywhere. Anywhere, any single page where somebody might eventually land, you want to have that pixel. Blog pages, home pages, inner pages, product pages, subdomain, root domain, thank you pages, registration pages, etc. Just, webinar pages, get that pixel everywhere. The greater width and breadth your core audience has to it, the more nuanced you'll be able to segment out for specific use cases. And lastly, tracking value. We're going to cover this in a few minutes. It's very easy to track value in Facebook custom event conversions. If you're and I want to just talk to you about the benefits of tracking value, which is conversion value. If you're telling Facebook rather, the revenue you're generating from a conversion, and usually these will be purchase conversions, but you should also be tracking revenue for form submission conversions. Facebook can show your return on ad spend in their ads reporting. So if you're running an ad campaign, not only will you be tracking the number of sales or purchases or registrations you're getting, Facebook will also be able to tell you the value of those, and then you can compare it to you could do a total conversion value divided by cost of the ads to get your return on ad spend. More importantly, Facebook can optimize ads for higher value conversions. So if you have multiple different purchases on your site, and if there's multiple different purchases and each purchase has a different value, Facebook could actually optimize for higher value conversions. And of course, if you're running e-commerce ads, you would connect your Facebook account to the Shopify partner integration, and Facebook will dynamically track the conversion value of a sale. You can optimize your campaigns for ROAS as well. So you could set budget optimization and campaign optimization if you're running paid Facebook ads to specifically optimize for higher value conversions. But of course, you have to be sending that value back into Facebook you have to be sending that value back into Facebook through your conversion tag that Facebook gives you. And again, you could add value. Remember, we talked about there was two different ways you could track conversions, either through custom URL-based conversions or through Facebook's default event library. Either one of those two options allows you to add value and a currency. And I'm going to show you how that looks, and we're going to get into it. So anyway, that's the basic idea here with what I want to cover. I think we've covered a good amount already, just understanding the difference between pixel, the different ways to track events, what you do with the pixel. But now I'm going to just show you step by step how all this stuff is done, starting with the actual Facebook pixel. And let's get into it right now. So here we are in a Facebook ads campaign. And this is where, like, most of you probably spend most of your time, inside a Facebook ads campaign. And Facebook, like I said, makes it a little bit complicated to find where everything is. But let me show you. So first is getting the pixel, because we said the most important thing is getting that pixel onto your site. So if you go into Ads Manager, if you're in Ads Manager, you're going to navigate up into this menu up here, and you're going to go down to All Tools, and then all the conversion tracking stuff and tools and data analysis is all going to be under the Measure and Report column right here. So you can go into Events Manager, and then you could navigate into any of these subcategories, or you could just go straight to pixels. So let's just go to Events Manager, and then we'll navigate to pixels. So like I said, Events Manager is where everything is going to live. So I'm going to go into data sources, which is the default. And from data sources, you're going to click on your pixel. So this is the overview of the activity of this specific pixel. And you have a secondary submenu where you could test different events, diagnostics, and settings. I happen to know I have a little warning here. That's because my currency is not set up the way it should be, but it's still tracking, so it's okay. Over here, you'll see an important tool that tells you the status of your pixel and the last event that was received, in my case, 21 minutes ago. So now, say you haven't installed your pixel yet, so you want to go ahead and install your pixel. So that's going to be under Setup. Up here on the upper right-hand corner, you're going to click Setup, and then you're going to click Install Pixel. And you have a couple different ways to install your pixel. Like I said, you could connect to a partner platform, and Facebook will give you a list of partner platforms. So there's Webflow, that's pretty good. It's Ticketmaster, WordPress, 3D Cart, Google Tag Manager, and all these things. And I don't know why, I just choose to do it myself through Google Tag Manager. I'm using Kajabi for some of my learning, as a CMS for my courses, etc. And this Agency Overdrive video that you're watching right now is hosted on Kajabi, so I could install my pixel by clicking this Partner Connect. But I just like to do it myself, and it's worthwhile knowing how to do it yourself in case you need to install a Facebook pixel and there isn't a partner integration set up. So I'm going to click again, Install Pixel. And I'm going to select to manually install the pixel code myself. And if you have a developer, you can just email the instructions to a developer, voila, and that's great. But of course, in the Agency Overdrive, we're trying to learn how to do all these things ourselves as best as possible with as much fluency as possible. So we'll manually install the pixel code, and really, really easy. The first thing Facebook's showing you is not actual code. They're just explaining to you where it should go. So they're saying they want you to put insert pixel code here. This code down here is what's supposed to go in the header section of your site. Now, I want to just make this clear because a lot of people have a lot of confusion about this. If the code is in the footer section of your site, it'll still fire. If it's in the body of your page, it'll still fire. Facebook wants it in the header of the page, and you should put it in the header of the page because guess what? The header of your website loads first. So in case there might be some, video in the body that's taking a while to load and the footer code hasn't loaded yet, if you have the Facebook pixel in the header of your site, you'll have a greater chance of collecting a user even if the rest of the page doesn't load. But it'll work wherever. The other advantage of putting it in the header is that it'll typically then be installed on every single page of your site. So I have Google Tag Manager installed on my site, and you should have Google Tag Manager installed, and it's very, very easy to install. So what I would do here is by the way, keep all this turned on, which is very positive for Google getting better data when it comes to optimizing campaigns. And the main thing though is we're going to go into here, copy code to clipboard. Just click that right there. And then you're going to go into if you're going to do this directly in the back end of your site, that's fine. If you have WordPress, you could have a tag manager. There's plenty of great tag manager plugins. If you're on Squarespace, there's a place to add header code for the whole site. Wix and Weebly, they all have all these website builders, including HubSpot and these other more modern CMS systems, and even Shopify and all the 3D Cart, Magento, BigCommerce. I've used them all. They all have an easy place to just inject header code. That's what you're looking for. But I'm going to show you how to do it in Google Tag Manager because it's the best place to do it. So here I am in a Google Tag Manager account. And most of you, when you log into Google Tag Manager, you'll be on this overview page. It'll show you what domain it's on. And you go into tags. And I happen to have the Facebook Pixel tag installed already. But if you don't, I'm going to show you how to do it. So you're going to click New for a new tag, and you're going to title it. So you'll title it something like Facebook Pixel. And I already have it. Oh, okay, Facebook Pixel. And you're going to configure your tag first by clicking that button. And go figure, Google Tag Manager doesn't have a default Facebook Pixel integration, last I checked, but it doesn't really matter because you're just going to simply use a custom HTML tag down here. So you can go to custom HTML tag, and then you simply paste in what you have from your clipboard. It's right there. That's that. And then you go to triggering. So you need to trigger this pixel. So you need to tell Google Tag Manager when this pixel should be triggered. So for a lot of different types of tags, let's say you have a tag for an exit popover that you might only want to trigger on a certain page. But I'm going to trigger it on all pages, and that's a default trigger that Google Tag Manager comes with. Simple enough. Save. And then remember, by the way, once you've saved it, you must submit the container. And then you publish that container. And of course, by the way, you have to have a container added to your site already. And that's the beauty of Tag Manager, is all you need to do is add one tag to the back end of your site one time, which is the Google Tag Manager container tag, and then all the additional tags you just do through this beautiful Tag Manager interface, which is fantastic. Now, if you want to just double check to see if the tag is working on your site, Google Tag Manager has a really great preview and diagnostics tool that allows you to go to your site and actually see which tags are firing when. So I'm going to click over here, Preview, and I'm going to show you this preview tool real quick. Now Google Tag Manager is going to reload in preview mode, right? So it says now previewing workspace, and I'm just going to open up one of the pages that should have this tag. And you'll see on the bottom, something will pop up and it'll show me, and this is a Tag Manager preview and debug toolbar that you could scale up and down. And it'll show me the tags fired on this page. So I see Facebook Pixel, which is the original one, and this FB Pixel, which is the new one. So I know that it's firing on the page as it should be. And remember, with the Facebook Pixel, all you want and all you are looking for is that it's firing. We're not looking for custom conversions right now. We just want to know that this pixel is firing. Now I'm going to go actually and delete that tag because I already have my Facebook Pixel. So this is one I just created. So if I go into it, I could go click this three dot icon and just delete it. And delete it. And now it's gone. And I'm going to submit again. You have to always submit after changes. And publish and continue. And then I'm going to leave preview mode. Go back to my workspace. And I'm going to leave preview mode. And that will allow me to continue on going back to the site. And if I refresh, this preview and debug toolbar will not be visible. Okay, now let's continue on. Now that we've installed our tag in Tag Manager, let's continue on a little bit. And that brings us back to our Pixel overview dashboard showing activity, purchases, etc., so on and so forth. And of course, if it's a new pixel, all this will be blank, but this report will eventually become filled in, and you could change the date range, and it's just like any other reporting. We don't need to go into that. But let's create an audience. So over here, we're going to create up here. And again, if you ever get lost, you always just go back up into this menu, go back to all tools, you go back into the events manager, and this is where everything lies, in the events manager. So you go into your data source for your specific pixel, and we're going to create an audience. And remember, we said audiences are segments of our population. So I might want to create it. So by default, you could create, Facebook allows you to create an all website visitors. That's the default audience. Now, you don't have to create these audiences right away. Okay, so some people think like, oh, do I have to create the audiences right away? It'll look retroactively at all the data that's collected so far. It's not going to only collect data moving forward. Okay, that's a big thing to understand. So don't worry. Like, you could just add your pixel to the site, and in 60 days from now or 30 days from now, if you're coming to create audiences, it'll look back at all the data in the database, which is why, just to reiterate, it's so important to add that pixel to your site right away. This is also an important toggle over here. Include people who meet any or all of the following. So this is an and or statement for creating rules for pixels. So let's say I want to create a remarketing audience of, let's say I want to create a campaign that targets people who bought from me in the past, but also people that visited a specific page. So let's say I would go and say, okay, people who visited a specific page in the past 30 days, I can make it 90 days or whatever it is. And the URL contains something like a specific blog post. Maybe I had blog, webinar, sign up. I don't know. You have to go and grab that URL. And again, you don't have to put in the full URL. And I could also create another rule, and the URL also has to match another URL. So you can get as creative as you want, and you could remove that. So I could further refine. So I could say that people who have visited this page more than 2 times. And again, like, this is not something which is used that often. And you could also further refine by device. So I could say that I only want to put people on this audience if they've met this criteria above on any of these devices. All right. So again, not usually used that often. I could include more people. I can create another rule. So if I have any of these following criteria, it's this or this. So maybe I want to have let's say, completed a purchase in the past 30 days, right? That's, I'm willing to, this audience will then contain anybody who purchased in the past 30 days or anybody who viewed this specific URL. But if I change this to all, it's going to be changed to an and statement. So now the only people on this list will be people who purchased and people who viewed this webinar sign up. And I could further narrow and create more rules, and you can get very, very creative. There's literally limitless amounts of different types of audiences that you could create. It's pretty cool. So let's say, okay, I'm going to create all people who purchased in the last 90 days, and I'm going to name it purchasers last 90, just so I could remember what that is when I go to create it and add it to a command. So now go and create the audience. And that's that. I've created a custom audience. And now there's a couple things I could do. So I could use that custom audience in an ad campaign. So I could say if I have a new product that I think will be good for my existing customers, I could target my ads to previous purchasers. But I could also create lookalike audiences, and that's another very powerful thing. I could say, all right, I want to create a new campaign targeting new people, but I want Facebook, but because I have a good amount of data on previous purchasers, I want Facebook to take a look at this lookalike audience. I want Facebook to take a look at the characteristics of this audience, of people who have bought from me in the past, and find new people like them that Facebook thinks will also become new customers of mine. So you could create lookalike audiences from audiences. You could also use those audiences themselves as a targeting parameter in a campaign. And then you can go ahead and create another audience. You can keep creating as many custom audiences as you'd like. So that's the idea of creating custom audiences. And there's no additional coding necessary. Once you have the pixel on your site, you can create as many audiences as you want without any additional modifications to the code. Now let's go ahead and create a custom conversion. So let's say I want to create a conversion. If somebody gets to this page, this is a page on my website it's a sales page. It's a webinar offer page where people could actually check out. And say I want to create an audience of anybody who's reached this page, but did not actually check out, for example. Or I'm sorry, rather I want to create a conversion event for anybody who's reached this page. So I'll just copy the string, this URL string, and I'm going to create a custom conversion. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to come in here, I'm going to create a custom conversion. And again, custom conversions are all URL based. So URL contains, and I paste that in, and I could do an or statement. I could add additional rules, and I'll name that anybody who, let's say, viewed webinar sales page. The category will be, let's see, view content. And the value, meaning the value is not clear here because this is not an actual purchase. But let's say I know that my conversion rate is 1%, right? And my conversion rate is 1%, and the value of this sale is $500. So I'll just put a $5 conversion value over there, $5 US dollars, and I'll create that conversion. And again, I don't have to use that conversion. I don't have to use it. I don't have to optimize any campaigns for that conversion right now. But eventually I might want to use that. And this is also important when you talk about micro conversions, because say, for example, I'm running you're running a campaign for a webinar, and you're making an offer at the end of that webinar, or you're actually trying to sell a product off your website and it's expensive, and you don't have that many sales per day, but you have a lot more people reaching the sales page. So instead of optimizing a Facebook campaign off of a specific actual end sale, you might want to test optimizing a Facebook campaign or a Facebook ad set off of a micro conversion, off of somebody actually reaching the sales page, because that will be feeding Facebook's algorithms more data. And I've spoken about micro conversions in the past. We've been doing that a lot for Google ads, using more automated bidding strategies. And it's the same thing is true for Facebook, where you want to continue to feed Facebook's algorithms more and more data, more and more conversion data. So if you could create a custom conversion off of a step that's before the final step, and you happen to know your conversion rate, that's a very worthwhile thing to do, which is similar to what I just set up there. So you create done, and that's custom conversions. And I could set up additional custom conversions, and I name those conversions. Now I could test events as well. So let's say I want to test an event. You could test an event in real time. So I could clear. You might have some activity here, but you can clear activity. And if I refresh this page, and let's say I want to go to this website and test to make sure my event was set up properly, right? I want to make sure I have a $5 conversion event set up when somebody hits this page. So I go back into my Facebook pixel. I refresh, and you have to refresh. You might have to refresh a couple times for Facebook to give you this option. Okay, there you go. So you enter the website URL. I open the website. I let it load. And then I go back to my Facebook Pixel tab, and it shows me that it seemed to work, right? So I see viewed webinar sales page, conversion value 500, but that should be $5. And at least we know that the conversion is actually working. So that's very, very good. And I think this test event is actually a really useful tool, because it's when you're creating these custom conversions, it's always worthwhile to just run a quick test to make sure it's set up properly. So going back to my overview page, that's okay. So that's the idea of creating custom conversions. So we've created audiences, we've created custom conversions, and now I want to show you the second way of creating conversions, which is using Facebook's default event library. And like I said originally, this is my preferred way of setting up events. So I'm going to set up, and under setup is where you have install pixel. You're going to set up new events. Now again, like I said, like Facebook has this whole, it's like all these things are in convoluted places. You have events manager, then you have all these different submenus. And then under the same menu is installing the pixel and setting up events, but the custom conversions events is somewhere else. So you just have to understand that these basic things exist. And it's really just three things. It's the pixel, which is step one. Then there's what you could do with the pixel, which is branches out into two areas. You can create custom audiences, and you could create conversion tracking. And under conversion tracking, there's two primary ways of doing it: URL-based custom conversion actions and event-based libraries of pre-built Facebook events, which to me is the preferred method. So I'm going to click set up new events, and I'm going to use Facebook's event. I'm sorry, I'm going to use manually install event code, because this is the one just that works the best. And here you have a menu where you're going to actually get all the code for these pre-built events. Now, first thing is there's a menu of different categories. So you go to and a lot of them are the same, by the way. So you go to real estate, they give you a bunch of pre-built, like, contact, a lead, somebody schedules an appointment. If I go to travel, maybe it's like, initiate a checkout. But this is just really like, so if you just go to e-commerce and retail, you get the biggest list, and you could also see more events by twirling down this menu. And these are the events that Facebook has pre-built. You cannot add new ones. This is what you're working with. So if you find something here that's relevant to your event that you want to track, and most likely you will, it's better to use this. So say, for example, I want to track a purchase. So I'm going to go over to the purchase one, and I'm going to twirl it down. And this is where I'm going to actually be setting up and getting my code. So let's say I'm setting up a conversion action for my agency overdrive subscription. So if you're tracking revenue from something which is a recurring revenue, you have to know your lifetime value, or you have to be able to predict it to some extent. If you're tracking sales of a static product, then it's fine, you know your value. And that's something which is like when you're tracking conversions for subscriptions for a new subscription, you're not going to really know your lifetime value. And in fact, getting an actual lifetime value is very hard. I would just recommend being a little bit conservative, because you want to get when you're sending value back, you want to get as clear of a sense of ROI as you possibly can. So I'm going to put in $132 for my conversion value for a agency overdrive buyer. You need to put in the ISO code for currency, so it's a 3-digit code. I don't have an ID, and quantity is 1, but by default it's going to just track one conversion. If you have a certain type of checkout that by default there's multiple quantities, that's fine. And content ID is for dynamic ads if you're using a shopping feed. But again, if you're doing that, then most of the time your conversions are set up through the Shopify partner integration or whatever CMS you're using anyway. You could add additional parameters that you're sending if you're using custom analytics or things like that, but again, not relevant in most cases. So you set up your basic you set up your basic parameters, your conversion value. You could leave it blank. And again, by the way, you want to save this track event on page load. This is the easiest way to install custom events. And remember, we're not doing anything URL based here. Like, we actually have to take the code Facebook gives us and add it to our page. So Facebook suggests that you're going to paste this new script right at the end of the original Facebook code. And again, it doesn't have to be right at the end of the Facebook code. It could be anywhere on the page. And you could hover over and copy this to your clipboard. So I'm going to go into the back end of one of my pages, which is where I am over here. And if any of you have used Shopify, you'll recognize this. Now realize that I don't have the Facebook main pixel on this page because I use it, I install it through Google Tag Manager. And if you're doing that, if you're doing Google Tag Manager, which you should, you're not going to actually see in the HTML the Facebook output. Now, I could also install this exact same script within Google Tag Manager. Totally fine way of doing it. But I want to show you how to also install it on the page itself. So I have this Facebook already over here, but I'm going to go down to the bottom of the page right before the closing body tag, and I'm just going to paste that in. And that's that. And I'm going to click save. I have it's showing me that I'm tracking a purchase, and the value is 132, and the currency is US dollars. And remember that the only reason why this works without having the Facebook pixel in the code of that page is because the Facebook pixel is already installed on this page through Google Tag Manager. These events that I'm showing you how to set up here will not work. These events will not work unless you have a Facebook pixel on the page. Okay, so again, these are add-ons. These little pieces of script for events are add-ons to the Facebook pixel. And again, one of the utilities of, well, two of the main reasons why you would want to use Facebook's event library like we're doing here, as opposed to doing a URL-based rule. Two reasons. One is if you end up changing the URL, you're going to mess up your conversion tracking code if you're using custom conversion trackings, and you will not mess up the code if you're just adding the code manually to the page. And two is in the Facebook reporting in ad campaigns, Facebook has a bunch of these default column sets that will automatically include Facebook's own pre-built conversion events. That's why I like to use these events when I can. Now, let's say I'm done and I want to create a registration event or something else. I can just go back into setup. I set up a new event. I manually install the event code, and then I could say, okay, maybe we're going to do a subscription. Or we're going to do a complete registration. So somebody registers for my webinar, or a contact form, something like that. So I'll click on contact and I'll paste that. And I don't have any activity yet for that because I don't have this tag active. And again, you would want to put this contact code where, not where the form is, but on the thank you page of the form. That's what's very important. Track an event on an inline action is what you would have to set up if you don't have a thank you page, if you just want to track the event based on a button click. And in that case, you're going to need to know the ID of the button. So over here, Facebook gives you a default contact button ID. You'll have to actually know the ID of the specific button you want to track, and then you could track an event on an inline action. But if you actually have a thank you page, which in most cases you should, for any conversion or any page that signifies that that conversion must have happened, then just use the event on page load function. It's much easier, and that doesn't, you don't need to know any sort of, IDs for different elements on your page. So again, you can go back, and there's all these, and you could continue to go back into this event setup system and set up as many events as you want. Now remember, even setting up the events doesn't do anything. And when you create campaigns, you could cherry pick which event or which conversion you want to optimize for. So don't feel nervous or don't hesitate to set up as many conversion actions as you possibly can or as you want. You could use them later on. Certain campaigns could optimize for this conversion, other campaigns can optimize for that conversion, and you could actually change the optimization if you're using some Facebook automated bidding, which you should. You could change that automated bidding to optimize across any event that you want. So I'll show you quickly how to do that. So let's say we go back into Ads Manager, and I'm going to look at some campaigns I have that are optimizing for conversion actions. So for example, this campaign, all the ad sets are optimizing for completed registrations. So if I go into here and I go into one of the ad sets and I click edit, you'll see that that I'm tracking to complete a registration. Like that's what I'm looking to do. Say I wanted to change that. I want to just do that in a different campaign that is not active or as active. I'll go into here. I'll click on an ad set. And say I want to say, okay, instead of optimizing for completed registration, maybe I'll optimize for view webinar sales page. That's that new conversion action we just added and we tested it. Green means it was tested. Green doesn't mean any events were received. Green just means it was tested. Or I want to optimize for an actual purchase, and it shows you how many events were received. So 104 events were received, or I could choose my completed registrations. So you could cycle through all the different conversion actions you've set up, whether they be event-based or custom conversions. Because remember, viewed webinar sales page was a custom conversion that we set up using a URL rule. And I'm going to bring that back to complete a registration. So And that's the conversion action this ad set is going to be tracking, and that's the conversion action that this budget will be optimizing to receive. And then this is useful because I can go down and when I'm bidding, I could choose to bid in different ways. I could choose to target a cost per registration, or if let's say I'm going to be optimizing for view webinar sales page, I would only want to pay maybe like $2 for a view of a webinar sales page, and I could do that. So if I go back, because I'm going to be optimizing for an event registration, or actually rather, if I was actually a view of a sales page would be more valuable. But anyway, I'm going to go back to change that to complete registration, and because I made a couple different edits here, hopefully I won't have to publish, but yes, at some point Facebook's a little annoying, they'll make you publish, which is why I wanted to go in here and do these edits in a campaign that's not active, or not as active, or not as important. So that's the value of tracking, setting up these conversion tracking systems, whether you're doing it through a URL based, or you're doing it through, or whether you're doing it through the pre-built event library in Facebook. Let's go back to our events manager, and I'm going to show you the partner integrations real quick. So again, we start off with data sources. Within data sources, I could test my events. We showed you that. There's diagnostics. If you ever have any errors, Facebook will show you what the errors are and how they're impacted. Custom conversions are those URL-based conversions that you're setting up. And over here under custom conversions is where you're going to see an overview and data of all the different custom URL-based conversions you have set up. And under custom conversions, you will not have the data from the events. You're only going to have data from your URL-based conversions. And then lastly, we're going to have partner integrations, where you're going to be able to go in and set up, a direct integration with a CMS that you might be using. And this is another easy way to do it. So let's say you're doing it for Kajabi. I can connect my Kajabi account by clicking connect account. I will click continue. It's going to give me some instructions for what to do, and then you just sort of follow the steps straight through, and you'll be able to then more easily set up the pixel tracking and different conversion events based on all the information that Kajabi sends to Facebook ads. And you can do the same thing with all these other platforms such as Shopify, and all these different things. Like I could set up a website event based on URL, but I could do the same thing otherwise. Listen, it makes it I'm all for the partner integrations, especially if you're doing e-commerce. That's when it really becomes valuable, because it makes tracking dynamic conversion value much easier. So if you have a Shopify catalog with 300 products, we have clients that have 20,000 SKUs in their Shopify library. Facebook will automatically pull the value of a sale by using that integration. So it's very, very worthwhile. And if you scroll down here, you'll see all these different potential integrations you could use. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this was useful. And like I said in the beginning, Facebook makes all this stuff look very, very complicated. But remember, there's just 3 components, and visualize it like a family tree diagram. You have the pixel. The pixel is the most important thing to just get on your site, do it through Google Tag Manager, make sure it's firing on every single page. The pixel is going to be what just creates a database of users. It's just your total population. From the pixel, that branches out into 2 areas. What is the utility of a pixel? What can you actually do with the data from a pixel? Well, there's 2 primary things. I could create custom audiences. Those custom audiences could be used as targeting parameters in ad campaigns. There's all different types of custom audiences you could create. You can get creative, but the point is that you could then use slices or segments or buckets of your total audience to have custom audiences, which you could then create. You could then use as targeting parameters, or you could create lookalike audiences off of your custom audiences. But that's the number one. That's the first utility of the pixel. Audiences, which are custom audiences, lookalike audiences. The second utility of the pixel is conversion tracking. Conversion tracking has all these different useful things built into it. So it's for optimizing campaigns. It's for targeting bid caps. It's for budget optimization. It's all different things you could use to make your campaigns more effective. Reporting, value, ROAS, all those things. But the main thing is, like, you just need to know that that's the second utility of the pixel, is conversion tracking in general. From conversion tracking, you branch out into 2 more areas. You have the pre-built event library, in Facebook, which allows you to set up all these like common conversions. And then you have the custom conversions, which are URL-based conversions that if you don't see something that is easy for you to integrate or set up in the, or you don't have access to manually edit any code, and you don't see anything that you could use in the pre-built Facebook events library, then you just create custom conversions based on URL, but those are the exact same thing essentially. Conceptually, they're the same thing. It's just telling Facebook when a valuable event occurred. And you add that value in the form of US dollars, and you track that custom events, and then you track that custom value, so you have ROAS reporting, and Facebook could optimize for your higher value visitors. And lastly, you have the partner integrations that if you're using one of these popular CMS systems that Facebook integrates with natively, you could use those to set up conversion tracking in an easier way, especially when it comes to e-commerce, if you need to track dynamic conversion value. So that's all about the Facebook Pixel. That's how to use it. That's how to find all the different things within the account. It's how to configure everything with the settings that will make your business grow the best. And hopefully you'll be able to use this information to then clearly explain to your clients how all this stuff works, how all this stuff works together, and why it's so important to be just collecting a database of users right away. And lastly, just to reiterate, get that pixel on your site right away. Make sure it's in the header section. Make sure it's firing on every single page. And that's that. It's really not so complicated once you wrap your mind around it. Like once you understand the core components, it's really quite simple. It's quite understandable, and it's fun to be able to explain this stuff to people that are very, very confused by it, because most people, when they go into Facebook ads and they start thinking about pixels and events and custom conversions and lookalike audiences and actual targeting audiences, they get very confused. And you'll now be able to just break it down in simple bite-sized chunks and explain clearly, professionally, how they all work together to create more effective Facebook ads campaigns. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys very shortly in the next lecture.